She took $5 million for one night, but the powerful CEO refused to let her go. Hello, let's hear another incredible story. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. I love narrating stories for you, so get ready, let's start. The 52nd floor of Morrison & Reed felt more like a prison than a law firm tonight. Jasmine Turner stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching Manhattan's lights flicker against the darkness. Her reflection stared back at her. Tailored charcoal suit, natural curls pulled into a professional bun, determination etched into every line of her face. The same face that had argued 3 cases that week, won 2, and was about to lose everything anyway. Her phone buzzed again. Mount Sinai Hospital, the 3rd time today. She let it ring, knowing exactly what they would say. Her mother's experimental treatment wasn't covered by insurance, and the $300,000 bill wasn't going to pay itself. Still here, Turner? The voice made her spine stiffen. Robert Morrison Jr., the managing partner's son, stood in her office doorway. His carefully cultivated stubble and $1,000 suit couldn't hide the smirk she'd grown to despise. "And just finishing the Bradley case notes," she replied, turning to face him. The lie came easily. She'd actually finished them hours ago, but these days, showing any weakness at Morrison & Reed was like bleeding in shark-infected waters. "Heard about your mum?" He stepped into her office uninvited, hands in his pockets. "Tough break. You know, if you're struggling with the caseload, we could always redistribute some of your clients. Help you focus on family matters." The threat wasn't even thinly veiled. In the past 3 months, she'd watched 5 senior associates voluntarily step down after similar conversations. The firm was cleaning house, making room for Robert's Yale classmates. Her perfect case record and 90-hour work weeks meant nothing against old money and older connections. "I appreciate the concern," Jasmine said, each word measured, controlled. But my cases are well in hand." Robert's smile didn't reach his eyes, just looking out for the firm's interests. "By the way, the Anderson merger meeting's been moved up. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. sharp." Jasmine's heart stopped. The Anderson case was hers, a complex merger she'd been orchestrating for months. The meeting had been scheduled for next week. "That's impossible. The due diligence report needs to be presented tomorrow," Robert cut in. "Then unless, of course, you're not up to it." He left before she could respond, his designer shoes silent on the plush carpet. Jasmine waited until his footsteps faded before sinking into her chair. Her hands trembled as she pulled up the Anderson files. The due diligence report would take all night to prepare, and even then, it would be rushed, imperfect. Exactly what Robert wanted. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't the hospital. Unknown number. "Ms. Turner, my name is Catherine Walsh. I represent Mr. Liam Davenport of Davenport Industries. He would like to discuss a private matter with you. Dinner tonight, 10 p.m. The private dining room at 11 Madison Park. Your discretion would be appreciated." Jasmine stared at the message. Liam Davenport. Even in New York's crowded billionaire ecosystem, he stood apart. 34 years old, self-made, with a reputation for turning failing companies into gold mines and crushing anyone who stood in his way. His latest target was a pharmaceutical company that had recently denied coverage for an experimental cancer treatment, the same treatment her mother needed. "Ms. Turner, I'm afraid I must decline. I have pressing work matters." The response came immediately. Unknown number. "Mr. Davenport is aware of your current situation, both professional and personal. He believes this meeting would be mutually beneficial. A car is waiting downstairs." Jasmine's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Every instinct screamed that this was wrong. In her 8 years of law practice, private dinner invitations from billionaires had never led to anything mutually beneficial, at least not professionally. But she thought of her mother, lying in that hospital bed, still trying to smile through the pain, of the stack of medical bills in her desk drawer, of Robert's smirk, and the inevitable fall he was orchestrating. "Ms. Turner, I'll be down in 10 minutes. The car was a Rolls-Royce Phantom, because of course it was. The driver, a discreet woman in a black suit, opened the door without a word. The leather seats were soft enough to make Jasmine's tired muscles ache with relief, but she sat straight, alert. Her mother had taught her that. Never let your guard down just because something feels comfortable. Manhattan slid by outside the tinted windows. Friday night crowds spilled onto the sidewalks, laughing, living, unconcerned with experimental treatments or impending professional doom. Jasmine checked her reflection in a compact mirror, reapplied her lipstick, Brave by MAC, her power color, and tried to quiet the voice in her head that kept asking, "What exactly am I walking into?" 11. Madison Park loomed ahead, its Art Deco facade illuminated against the night sky. The maitre d' was waiting for her, as though she was expected hours ago instead of minutes. She followed him through the main dining room, where New York's elite savored $1,000 tasting menus, and into a private space that redefined luxury. And there he was. Liam Davenport stood as she entered, and Jasmine's legal training kicked in, cataloging details automatically. 6'2", impeccable black suit that had to be bespoke, dark hair with a hint of silver at the temples despite his age. His features were almost too perfect. Strong jaw, straight nose, intense grey eyes that seemed to absorb everything. But it was his presence that filled the room. That indefinable air of absolute authority that no amount of money could buy. "Ms. Turner," he said, his voice deeper than she expected, with just a trace of something that might have been Boston once, before time and power smoothed it away. "Thank you for joining me on such short notice." He held out a chair, and Jasmine took it, hyper-aware of his proximity as he pushed it in. The table was set with fine china and crystal, but only one place setting. "You're not eating?" she asked as he returned to his seat. "I already did." He studied her with those grey eyes, and Jasmine felt like a company being assessed for acquisition. "Please, order whatever you'd like. The chef has been instructed to accommodate any preferences." "I'm not hungry." A lie. She hadn't eaten since breakfast, but 8 years of corporate law had taught her never to eat during negotiations, and whatever this was, it was definitely a negotiation. "As you wish." He reached for a leather portfolio that sat on the table. "Then let's discuss why you're here." "Yes, let's." Jasmine met his gaze steadily. "Although I'm curious how you knew about my mother's condition, medical records are supposed to be private." A slight smile curved his lips. "Very little in this city is truly private, Ms. Turner, especially when it involves a promising lawyer whose career is being systematically dismantled by an incompetent heir, while her mother needs experimental treatment that costs exactly $327,456. The precision of the number sent a chill down her spine. "You've been investigating me? Thoroughly?" He opened the portfolio and removed a single sheet of paper. "Your career at Morrison & Reed, impressive. Graduated top of your class at Columbia Law, turned down offers from more prestigious firms to work your way up from junior associate, perfect case record, until recently. No social life to speak of. Your apartment in Brooklyn, modest, paid off with your first-year bonus. Your only significant expense is your mother's medical care, which has depleted your savings and maxed out 3 credit cards." Anger flared in her chest. "If this is your attempt to demonstrate power, Mr. Davenport, you're wasting both our time. I'm well aware of my financial situation. This isn't a demonstration, Ms. Turner. It's context." He slid the paper across the table. "For my proposal." Jasmine didn't touch it. "What kind of proposal?" "A simple one." His voice was calm, matter-of-fact. $5 million. Transferred to your account immediately, in exchange for 1 night of your company. The words hung in the air between them. Jasmine felt her pulse in her throat, her fingers, her temples. The room seemed to tilt slightly, like a ship taking on water. "You're proposing to pay me for sex," she said flatly. "I'm proposing to solve your problems." He leaned forward slightly. "Your mother's treatment, your career, everything that keeps you awake at night, staring at your ceiling, wondering how it all slipped away so fast. 1 night, and it's done. Jasmine stood, her chair scraping against the floor. I'm not a prostitute, Mr. Davenport. No, he agreed, his eyes never leaving hers. You're a survivor. And right now, you're running out of options. There are always options. Are there? He gestured to the paper on the table. Read it, take it home. Think about what you could do with that money, about what it would mean for your mother, for your future. Jasmine wanted to walk out, to tell him exactly what he could do with his money and his proposal, but her hand was already reaching for the paper, folding it carefully, slipping it into her purse. Good night, Mr. Davenport. She turned to leave, her heels silent on the thick carpet. Miss Turner? She paused at the door, but didn't turn around. The car will take you home, he said, and the offer expires at midnight tomorrow. Choose wisely. Jasmine walked out without responding, her head high, her heart pounding. The same driver was waiting, the same soft leather seats offered comfort she couldn't accept. As the car glided through Manhattan's glittering streets, she tried not to think about the paper in her purse, about the weight of its promise. $5 million. One night. And all it would cost was everything she'd ever believed about herself. The Mount Sinai hospital corridor smelled of antiseptic and wilting flowers. Jasmine's heels clicked against the linoleum as she made her way to room 437, the same route she'd taken every morning for the past 3 months. Her laptop bag weighed heavily on her shoulder, filled with the rushed Anderson merger documents she'd completed at 4 a.m. She paused outside her mother's room, taking a deep breath. The paper from last night felt like it was burning a hole in her purse. $5 million. The number kept repeating in her head like a twisted mantra. There's my beautiful girl. Regina Turner's voice was weak but warm as Jasmine entered. Despite the IV lines and monitoring equipment, her mother managed to maintain an air of dignity. Her silk head wrap was perfectly arranged, and she'd insisted on applying light makeup, even here. Morning, Mom. Jasmine leaned down to kiss her cheek, careful not to disturb any of the tubes. How are you feeling today? Oh, you know me. Ready to dance. Regina's attempt at a laugh turned into a cough. When it subsided, she fixed Jasmine with a knowing look. You didn't sleep again. I had work to finish. Jasmine settled into the chair beside the bed, the one that had become more familiar than her own couch. But I'm fine. Baby, you haven't been fine since you were 12 years old and decided you had to be perfect. Regina reached for her hand, her grip frailer than yesterday. What's really wrong? Jasmine looked down at their intertwined fingers, her mother's deep brown skin now ashen, but her perfectly manicured nails still painted in her signature coral shade. How many times had she watched those hands grade papers, cook Sunday dinner, wipe away tears? Now they could barely hold a glass of water. The hospital called again about the payment, Jasmine said finally. And work is complicated. Complicated like that snake Robert Jr. trying to push you out. When Jasmine's head snapped up in surprise, Regina smiled. Baby, I might be sick, but I'm not blind. You think I can't read between the lines of your little updates? It's nothing I can't handle. Jasmine Marie Turner. Her mother's voice took on the stern tone that had guided Jasmine through childhood. You've been handling everything since your father left. Through college, law school, my first round of treatment, always handling, always carrying everyone else's burdens. But sometimes another coughing fit interrupted her, this one worse than the last. Jasmine reached for the water cup, but Regina waved it away, struggling to catch her breath. A nurse appeared in the doorway, alerted by the spike in vital signs on the monitors. I'm fine, Regina insisted between coughs. Just got worked up talking sense into my stubborn daughter. The nurse, Amy, who'd been on Regina's case since admission, checked the monitors anyway. Your oxygen levels are dropping again, Ms. Turner. We should probably hold off on visitors for a while. Nonsense. My daughter just got here. Mom. Jasmine stood, gathering her things. Amy's right. You need to rest. I have a meeting this morning anyway. Regina caught her hand again. Promise me something. Anything. Stop trying to be perfect. Sometimes the right choice doesn't look pretty. Sometimes it doesn't feel good. But if it saves the people you love, She squeezed Jasmine's hand. "That's all that matters." Jasmine's throat tightened. For a moment, she wondered if her mother somehow knew about Liam's proposal, about the war raging in her mind. But that was impossible. "I love you, Mom." "Love you too, baby. Now go show those suits what a Turner woman can do." The morning air felt thick as Jasmine emerged from the hospital. Her phone showed 3 missed calls from the office and a text from Robert. "Where are you?" "Meeting in 20. She looked at her reflection in a store window as she waited for her Uber. The sleepless night showed in her eyes, but her suit was pristine, her makeup flawless, perfect, like always. What would her colleagues think if they knew she was considering? The thought made her stomach turn. She opened her purse, pulled out Liam's proposal. She hadn't read it last night, hadn't wanted to make it real. But now, in the harsh morning light, she forced herself to look at the terms. It was surprisingly simple. 1 paragraph stating the amount, 1 outlining the date and duration. Tonight, 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. A final paragraph about mutual discretion. No flowery language, no attempt to disguise what it was. At the bottom, a single line waited for her signature. Her phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "The offer stands until midnight. LD." The Uber pulled up. As Jasmine slid into the back seat, her mind wandered to the hospital bills piling up on her desk, to her mother's increasing weakness, to the experimental treatment that could save her life, sitting just out of reach behind a $327,456 wall. Morrison and Reed's gleaming offices appeared ahead. Through the lobby windows, she could see Robert and the other partners gathering in the conference room, waiting to watch her fail. "Pull over," she told the driver suddenly. When he complied, she pulled out her phone and the proposal. Her fingers trembled as she dialed the number from last night. "Miss Walsh, this is Jasmine Turner. Please inform Mr. Davenport." She took a deep breath, thinking of her mother's words. Sometimes the right choice doesn't look pretty. "And I accept." "Excellent." Catherine Walsh's voice was professionally neutral. "A courier will deliver the contract to your office within the hour. Once signed, the funds will be transferred immediately. A car will pick you up at your apartment at 7:30 p.m. "Wait." Jasmine's grip tightened on the phone. "I have conditions." There was a pause. "Mr. Davenport doesn't typically—" "Then this conversation is over." She moved to hang up. "Wait." Another pause. "Into what are your conditions?" "First, I want the money split into 2 transfers, half now, half after. Always negotiate from strength," her first mentor had taught her. "Second, I choose what happens tonight, what I'm comfortable with, what I'm not. If Mr. Davenport can't accept that, he can find someone else." The silence stretched so long that Jasmine thought the call had dropped. Finally, "Hold for Mr. Davenport." Her heart jumped as his voice filled the line. "Impressive, Miss Turner. Most people don't have the courage to negotiate in your position. I'm not most people." Clearly, she could hear the smile in his voice. "Your conditions are accepted, though I have one of my own, which is dinner first, a proper one this time. I don't conduct business on an empty stomach." Jasmine closed her eyes. "Business, right. Fine. Dinner first. Perfect. Oh, and Miss Turner, don't worry about the Anderson merger. I just bought controlling interest in their company. The meeting this morning has been cancelled." The line went dead before she could respond. Jasmine sat in the Uber, watching Manhattan's morning traffic crawl past. She thought about her mother's words about perfect choices, about the weight of always handling everything alone. Finally, she opened her calendar and made a new entry for 8 p.m., meeting with L.D., professional, clinical. Like this was just another business transaction, like she wasn't about to sell her soul for $5 million. The Uber driver cleared his throat. "Where to, miss?" Jasmine straightened her spine, adjusted her suit jacket. "Morrison and Reed, please. I have some things to handle first." As the car pulled back into traffic, she did what she'd done every morning since she was 12, squared her shoulders, lifted her chin, and prepared to face the world as if everything was fine, as if her world wasn't about to change forever in less than 12 hours. Perfect, like always, even if she was breaking inside. 7:29 p.m. Jasmine stood before her bedroom mirror, scrutinizing her reflection. The black dress was designer, Valentino bought during better days, with a neckline that suggested rather than revealed, and a hem that kissed her knees. Professional enough for a business dinner, elegant enough for whatever came after. Her hand trembled slightly as she fastened her mother's pearl earrings, the only jewelry she'd kept after selling everything else for the medical bills. Her phone chimed, car waiting downstairs, right on time, of course. The elevator ride to the lobby felt eternal. Each floor pinged past like a countdown to execution. In her clutch, her phone buzzed again. The first transfer had cleared. $2.5 million now sat in her account, more money than she'd ever imagined having. The price of her dignity, measured to the penny. The same Rolls-Royce from last night idled at the curb. The same driver held the door, but tonight felt different, heavier, final. "Good evening, Ms. Turner." The driver's voice was professionally neutral. "Mr. Davenport is already at the restaurant." Jasmine nodded, not trusting her voice. As the car pulled away from her Brooklyn apartment, she watched her neighborhood fade into the rearview mirror. The corner bodega, where she bought her morning coffee. The park where she sometimes sat to review cases. The life she knew, growing smaller with each passing block. The car turned onto the Brooklyn Bridge, and Manhattan's skyline bloomed before them, a constellation of lights and possibilities. Usually, this view filled her with determination. Tonight, it felt like a cage of glass and steel, closing in. Her phone buzzed, a text from her mother. "Nurses say my numbers looked better today. Must be all those prayers you've been sending up. Love you, baby." Jasmine's throat tightened. She'd already arranged for the hospital bill to be paid first thing tomorrow morning. Her mother would never know the true cost. The car pulled up to Le Bernardin. Not 11 Madison Park this time, a new playing field. A host materialized as soon as she stepped out, as if he'd been waiting specifically for her. "Miss Turner, welcome, Mr. Davenport is expecting you." She followed him through the restaurant's elegant interior, past tables where New York's elite savored Eric Reipert's creations. Several faces turned to watch her pass. A few she recognized from legal circles. She kept her chin high, her walk steady. Let them look, let them wonder. Liam stood as she approached the private dining room. Tonight he wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her yearly salary, before taxes. His eyes tracked her entrance, taking in every detail with that same assessing gaze from the night before. "Miss Turner." He moved to pull out her chair. "You look exquisite, Mr. Davenport." She took her seat, carefully arranging her dress. "Keep it professional, clinical." "Thank you for the compliment." He returned to his seat, and she felt the full weight of his attention. Up close, she could see subtle details she'd missed yesterday, a thin scar along his jaw, a slight asymmetry to his features that made him human rather than statue. It somehow made him more dangerous. "I took the liberty of ordering the tasting menu," he said, gesturing to the wine being poured into her glass. "Unless you have objections." "No objections." Tonight she would eat. She needed her strength. "Good." He studied her over his own wine glass. "You seem tense." "Do I?" She met his gaze steadily. "I wonder why." A smile tugged at his lips. "Most women in your position would be trying harder to seem comfortable. Most women in my position would be trying to convince themselves this is a date." She took a sip of wine. "Exceptional, of course. I'm not most women." "No," he agreed, his voice dropping slightly. "You're not. Which is precisely why we're here." The first course arrived, a delicate composition of seafood and foam that looked more like art than food. Jasmine picked up her fork, hyper-aware of his gaze. "May I ask you something?" she said, carefully spearing a perfect bite. "You can ask, I may not answer." "Why me?" She looked up at him. "You could have any woman in New York, women who do this professionally. Why choose someone who clearly doesn't?" He considered her question as he tasted his wine. "Do you know what my first job was, Ms. Turner? According to Forbes, you started trading stocks at 16. Before that, I washed dishes at a diner in South Boston." His accent slipped through slightly. "Not Boston Brahmin, but something rougher. Minimum wage, 60 hours a week. The owner was a bastard who liked to remind us we were replaceable, that we should be grateful for whatever scraps he threw our way." He paused as the next course arrived, something with truffles that made Jasmine's mouth water despite herself. "I promised myself then that I would never be grateful for scraps," he continued, "that I would take what I wanted on my terms. The women you mentioned, they're grateful for whatever their clients give them. But you," his eyes locked onto hers, "you negotiated terms, you set conditions. Even knowing what I could offer, what you needed, you didn't beg, you demanded, and that appeals to you. It intrigues me." He leaned forward slightly. "Do you know how rare that is, to find someone who maintains their dignity even when selling it?" Jasmine's hand tightened on her fork. "Is that what you think I'm doing? Isn't it?" Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression darkening slightly. "Excuse me," he said, standing. "A matter requires my attention. Please enjoy your meal. I'll return shortly." Jasmine watched him leave, her appetite suddenly gone. His words echoed in her head, "Maintains their dignity even when selling it." Is that what she was doing? Maintaining dignity in an undignified transaction. She looked around the private dining room, at the crystal and silver, the perfectly pressed linens. Everything screamed wealth, power, control. His world, not hers. Yet in a few hours, her phone buzzed. A text from the hospital. "Treatment schedule confirmed for tomorrow morning. Payment received. Thank you for choosing Mount Sinai." She stared at the message until the screen went dark. Then she picked up her fork again, forced herself to eat. Whatever happened tonight, she needed to remember why she was here, what she was fighting for. Liam returned 10 minutes later, his expression now carefully neutral. "My apologies. Business never sleeps in New York." "No," Jasmine agreed, thinking of the Anderson merger he'd casually mentioned destroying that morning. "It doesn't." He studied her for a moment. "You're still angry about the merger." "I'm not angry, I'm curious." She met his gaze. "Did you buy that company just to control this situation? To ensure I'd be free tonight? Would it matter if I did? It would tell me what kind of man I'm dealing with." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "And what kind of man do you think that is? The kind who moves people like chess pieces, who thinks enough money can buy anything." She leaned forward slightly. "Am I wrong, Miss Turner?" He matched her posture, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Or if I thought money could buy anything, I wouldn't have chosen someone who can't be bought. I would have chosen someone who would smile, pretend to enjoy my company, and count the minutes until morning." His eyes traced her face. "But that's not what I want." "What do you want?" "I want truth." His hand moved across the table, not quite touching hers. "When you hate what I do to you tonight, I want to see it in your eyes. When you enjoy it, and you will enjoy it, I want to know it's real. Not purchased, not performed, real." Heat flooded Jasmine's cheeks. Before she could respond, he stood, offering his hand. "Shall we?" She looked at his offered hand, remembering her mother's words. Sometimes the right choice doesn't look pretty. But this wasn't about right or wrong anymore. This was about survival, about pride, about proving she couldn't be broken, even if she could be bought. She placed her hand in his. "Lead the way, Mr. Davenport." His fingers closed around hers, warm and certain. "Call me Liam." "No." She met his gaze one last time. "I don't think I will." His laugh followed her out of the restaurant, into the waiting car, and into the night that would change everything. The elevator in Liam's penthouse building moved so smoothly that Jasmine only knew they were ascending by the changing floor numbers, reflected in its mirrored walls. 58, 59, 60. She watched their reflection, her in black Valentino, him in bespoke charcoal, like characters in a film she couldn't quite believe she was starring in. Having second thoughts, Liam's voice broke the silence. Would it matter if I was? Of course. He turned to face her. You can leave at any time. The first payment is yours to keep. The offer surprised her. She studied his reflection, trying to read past that carefully constructed facade. Just like that, you'd let $2.5 million walk away? Money is easy to replace. His eyes met hers in the mirror. Pride isn't. The elevator doors opened directly into his penthouse. Jasmine stepped out into a space that somehow managed to be both minimalist and overwhelming. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Manhattan that made her feel like she was standing on top of the world. Modern art pieces, worth more than her annual salary, adorned the walls. Everything spoke of power, control, wealth, but nothing spoke of home. Drink. Liam moved to a bar that looked more like an art installation than a functional space. No. She set her clutch down on a sleek console table. I prefer to keep my head clear. Wise. He poured himself 2 fingers of what looked like extremely expensive scotch. Though sometimes clarity is overrated, Jasmine wandered to the windows, taking in the view. From up here, the city looked like a circuit board of light and shadow. Somewhere down there, her mother was sleeping in her hospital room. Somewhere down there, her old life waited, already feeling like a distant memory. Beautiful, isn't it? Liam's voice came from right behind her, making her start slightly. She hadn't heard him approach. It's isolated, she replied, like watching the world from behind glass. Isn't that what we all do? His breath stirred the hair near her ear. Create barriers between ourselves and reality. Some use glass and steel, others use perfectionism and pride. Jasmine turned to face him, finding herself trapped between his body and the window. Is this what you paid for? Amateur psychology? I paid for honesty. His free hand came up to trace her jawline, the touch impossibly light. Remember, she forced herself to hold still, to not react to his touch. Then honestly, this performance is unnecessary. We both know why I'm here. The seduction, the mind games, it's wasted effort. Is it? His thumb brushed her lower lip, and she hated how her pulse jumped. Your words say one thing, but your body... He leaned closer, his lips nearly touching her ear. Your body is surprisingly honest, Ms. Turner. Jasmine put a hand on his chest, pushing him back slightly. My body isn't the only honest thing in this room. You didn't pay $5 million for sex, Mr. Davenport. You paid for control. For the thrill of making someone like me, someone who can't be bought, sell themselves anyway. Instead of anger, her words drew a smile. Close, but not quite. He stepped back, giving her space. I paid to watch you fight it, to see how long you can maintain that perfect facade while everything crumbles around you. He took a sip of his scotch. The fact that you're beautiful, brilliant, and exactly my type. That's just a bonus. And what happens when I don't crumble? Then you'll be the first. He set his glass down on a nearby table. But we both know that's not going to happen. Before she could respond, he closed the distance between them again. This time, when he touched her face, there was nothing gentle about it. His fingers tangled in her hair, tilting her head back, and his mouth claimed hers with a possession that stole her breath. Jasmine had expected the kiss, had prepared herself for it. What she hadn't prepared for was her response, the way her body betrayed her, melting into his touch even as her mind screamed in protest. He tasted like expensive scotch and dangerous promises, and when his free hand slid down to pull her closer, she found herself gripping his shoulders for support. Still, just a performance, he murmured against her lips. The taunt snapped her back to reality. She bit his lower lip, not hard enough to draw blood, but enough to make him draw back in surprise. Don't mistake biology for surrender, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. You may have bought my time, Mr. Davenport, but my reactions aren't included in the price. For a moment, something dark and hungry flashed in his eyes. Then he laughed, a real laugh, not the controlled chuckle she'd heard at dinner. Ah, God, you're magnificent. He stepped back, running a hand through his hair. Do you have any idea how many women have been in this penthouse? How many have tried to play hard to get? thinking it would make me want them more?" He shook his head. "But you genuinely don't care if I want you or not, do you?" "Should I?" Jasmine smoothed her dress, using the moment to steady her racing pulse. "This is a transaction, not a courtship. Whether you want me is irrelevant. You've already paid for me, and that's exactly why I want you." He moved to the bar again, but this time he didn't pour a drink. Instead, he pressed a button, and soft music filled the space. "Dance with me." "No, no!" His eyebrow raised. "I believe the terms of our agreement. The terms of our agreement were that I choose what I'm comfortable with." She met his gaze steadily. "I don't want to dance. I don't want to pretend this is romantic. If you want my body, take it, but don't expect me to play along with your fantasy of seduction." Liam studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he pressed the button again, silencing the music. "Very well." He began loosening his tie. "The bedroom is through there. I'll give you 5 minutes to prepare yourself." Jasmine's heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her voice level. I don't need 5 minutes." "No." He stepped closer, and this time there was nothing playful in his expression. "Then take off your dress." The command hung in the air between them. Jasmine felt her hands trembling slightly as she reached for the zipper. This was it, the moment of truth, the point of no return. She thought of her mother in the hospital, of the treatment that would start tomorrow, of everything she'd sacrificed to get here. The zipper slid down with a sound like surrender. "Wait!" Liam's voice stopped her. She looked up to find him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Leave it on, for now." He closed the distance between them in 2 steps, his hands replacing hers on the zipper. "You're right," he murmured, his lips brushing her neck. "This isn't about romance. It's about power, control." His teeth grazed her skin. But you're wrong about one thing." "What's that?" Her voice came out breathier than she intended. "I didn't pay for your body." His hands slid under the partially unzipped dress, making her gasp. "I paid to watch you lose control, to see what happens when all that perfect composure finally breaks." He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. "And I intend to earn every penny." As his mouth claimed hers again, harder this time, more demanding, Jasmine felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. She had prepared herself for sex, for submission, for anything he might want from her body. But she hadn't prepared for this assault on her control, her composure, her very sense of self. And as his hands and mouth began their careful, calculated destruction of her defenses, she realized with growing horror that he had been right about one thing. She was going to crumble after all. 3 a.m. Jasmine stood in Liam's marble bathroom, staring at her reflection in the oversized mirror. Her carefully styled hair had come undone, falling in waves around her shoulders. The perfect makeup she'd applied hours ago was smudged at the corners, evidence of things she didn't want to think about. Her mother's pearl earrings glinted under the soft lighting, a reminder of why she was here. She'd excused herself 10 minutes ago, needing space to breathe, to think, to rebuild her walls. But the woman in the mirror looked like a stranger, someone wild-eyed and uncertain, someone who had lost more than just her composure in Liam's bed. The Valentino dress lay draped over a nearby chair, slightly wrinkled now. She'd put on one of his dress shirts instead, white cotton that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget. The fabric smelled like him, a fact she was trying very hard to ignore. A knock at the door made her start. "Miss Turner?" Liam's voice carried through the thick wood. "Are you all right?" The concern in his voice sparked something dangerous in her chest. "I'm fine," she cursed, the slight tremor in her words. "I'll be out in a minute. Take your time." A pause. "I ordered food, if you're hungry." Food. Such a normal, mundane thing, as if they hadn't just spent hours. She closed her eyes, trying to shut out the memories, the way his hands had mapped every inch of her skin, the sounds he'd drawn from her throat, the moment she'd finally broken, crying out his first name as pleasure overwhelmed her defenses. "Ms. Turner? Stop calling me that." The words escaped before she could catch them, a soft laugh from the other side of the door. I thought you didn't want me using your first name. That was before. She cut herself off, pressing her palms against the cool marble counter. Never mind. Before what? His voice dropped lower. Before I made you scream it. Heat flooded her cheeks. Are you enjoying this? Immensely. She could hear the smile in his voice. But I'd enjoy it more if you came out here and actually ate something. You'll need your strength. The implicit promise in his words sent a shiver down her spine. Is that an order, Mr. Davenport? Would you obey if it was? No. Then it's a request. Another pause. Please. Jasmine. Her name on his lips shouldn't have affected her. It was just a word, just a collection of sounds. But the way he said it, soft, almost reverent, made her knees weak. She opened the door to find him leaning against the frame, dressed only in black silk pajama pants. The scar she'd noticed earlier traced a path from his jaw down his neck, disappearing beneath his collarbone. She found herself wanting to trace it with her fingers, her lips. See something you like? His smirk snapped her out of her daze. I see someone who's rather pleased with himself. She moved past him into the bedroom, careful not to let their bodies touch. The bed had been remade, probably by the same invisible staff that had arranged what looked like a gourmet midnight feast on the terrace. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan glittered like a jewelry box spilled across black velvet. "Hungry?" Liam gestured to the spread of food. Not really, but her stomach betrayed her with a quiet growl. He smiled but didn't comment, just pulled out a chair for her. The terrace was heated, the autumn air pleasantly cool rather than cold. She sat, hyper-aware of his presence as he took the seat across from her. "You're thinking too hard," he said, pouring her a glass of water. "One of us has to." "Why?" He leaned back, studying her. "What's left to think about? The deal is done. The money is transferred. You've more than earned it." His eyes darkened slightly. Almost several times over, in fact. Jasmine picked up a grape, rolling it between her fingers. "Is that what you think this is about? The money, isn't it?" "No." She met his gaze. "It's about power, control. You said it yourself. And who has the power now?" He reached across the table, his fingers brushing her wrist. "The man who paid, or the woman who made him lose control?" She pulled her hand back. Don't what? Don't try to make this something it's not." She stood abruptly, moving to the terrace railing. The city spread out below her, a reminder of how far she'd fallen. "This isn't some romantic power exchange. It's a business transaction. You bought my body for the night, not my mind, not my—" She cut herself off. "Not your heart." He was behind her suddenly, his chest pressed against her back. "Is that what you're afraid of, Jasmine? That you might feel something?" "I don't feel anything." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. His hands settled on her hips, and she hated how her body immediately responded, leaning back into his touch. "Your body disagrees. My body betrayed me." She turned to face him, trapped between his warmth and the cold railing. "But that doesn't change what this is." "And what is this?" His hand came up to cup her face, thumb tracing her lower lip. "Tell me. This is—" She struggled to form words as his touch sent sparks across her skin. "This is you buying what you can't have any other way. A woman who doesn't want your money, your power, your—" He cut her off with a kiss, but this one was different from the others, softer, almost tender. When he pulled back, his eyes held something that made her heart stutter. "What if I want more?" His voice was rough. "What if one night isn't enough?" Fear shot through her, not of him, but of the way her pulse jumped at his words. "Then you'll have to find someone else to buy. I'm not for sale beyond tonight. What if I don't want to buy?" His fingers traced her jawline. "What if I want to earn?" Jasmine pushed him away, panic rising in her throat. "Stop it. This isn't real. Whatever you think you're feeling is just the thrill of the chase, the excitement of breaking someone's walls." She wrapped her arms around herself. "But my walls aren't broken, Mr. Davenport. They're just temporarily lowered for a price." "Liar!" He didn't move to touch her again, but his presence seemed to fill the space between them. "Your walls aren't just lowered, they're crumbling. I can see it in your eyes, feel it in the way you respond to my touch." He took a step closer. You're terrified because for the first time in your life, you're not in control. And the scariest part, you like it. You don't know me, don't I? Another step. I know you take your coffee black because you think cream and sugar are weaknesses. I know you wear those pearls to remind yourself of who you are when everything else is falling apart. I know you're brilliant and beautiful and so goddamn stubborn it makes me want to shake you. He was right in front of her now, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. And I know that right now, you're fighting the urge to kiss me, to let go, to admit that maybe, just maybe, this stopped being about money the moment I touched you. Jasmine's heart hammered against her ribs. Everything he said was true, and that terrified her more than any amount of physical intimacy. 4 hours, she said, her voice barely a whisper. What? We have 4 hours left. She forced herself to meet his gaze. Let's not waste them talking. Something like pain flashed across his face, but before he could respond, she pulled him down into a kiss. This one was desperate, almost violent. A kiss meant to prove something, to herself or to him. She wasn't sure anymore. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, he pressed his forehead against hers. This isn't over, Jasmine. Yes, she said, even as her heart screamed in protest. It is. But as he lifted her into his arms, carrying her back to the bed that had already witnessed so many surrenders, she wondered who she was really trying to convince. And as his lips and hands began their expert destruction of her resolve once more, she realized with growing dread that maybe he was right. Maybe this was just the beginning. 7:45 a.m. Manhattan's morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting Liam's penthouse in shades of gold. Jasmine stood at the window, fully dressed in last night's Valentino, watching the city wake up. Her body ached in ways that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion, and everything to do with the man still sleeping in the bed behind her. She'd slipped out of his arms 15 minutes ago, careful not to wake him, had gathered her things from where they'd been scattered across the floor, had erased all evidence of her presence, except for the lingering scent of her perfume on his sheets. The second transfer had already hit her account, $5 million. As promised. The hospital had confirmed her mother's treatment would begin in 2 hours. Everything she'd wanted, everything she'd needed, accomplished in a single night. So why did victory feel like loss? Leaving without goodbye. Liam's voice made her start. She turned to find him watching her from the bed, propped up on one elbow. The sheets pooled around his waist, and morning stubble darkened his jaw. He looked younger somehow, more vulnerable without his usual perfect composure. Our agreement ended at 8. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. I thought it best to run away, leave cleanly. He sat up fully, running a hand through his sleep-mussed hair. Is that what you want? What I want stopped mattering the moment I signed that contract. Bullshit. He stood, not bothering with clothes as he approached her. What you want is the only thing that's ever mattered. Jasmine forced herself to hold still as he reached her, refusing to step back despite his proximity. What I want, she said carefully, is to go home, shower, change, and be at the hospital when my mother starts her treatment. What I want is to forget this night ever happened. Liar. His hand came up to cup her face, and she hated how her body instantly leaned into his touch. If you wanted to forget, you wouldn't have spent the last 15 minutes standing here, watching the sunrise. Don't. She pulled away from his hand. Don't try to make this something it's not. And what is it? His voice hardened slightly. A simple transaction. A night of meaningless sex. He stepped closer, backing her against the window. Tell me, Jasmine, when was the last time a simple transaction made you cry out someone's name like a prayer? When was the last time meaningless sex left marks on your soul? Stop it. She pressed her hands against his chest, keeping him at arm's length. Whatever you think happened here, whatever connection you imagine we formed, it's not real. It's just chemistry, biology, nothing more. Then look me in the eyes and tell me you felt nothing. She met his gaze, prepared to lie. But the words stuck in her throat as she saw what he wasn't bothering to hide anymore. The raw need, the vulnerability, the same terrifying emotions she'd been fighting all night. "I can't," she whispered. "Can't what? Can't do this. Can't be what you want." She dropped her hands from his chest. "I have to go." She moved to step around him, but his hand caught her wrist, not roughly, but firmly enough to stop her. "Have dinner with me." The request was so unexpected it made her laugh. "What? Tonight? Dinner? A real one, not part of any arrangement?" "No." "Why not?" "Because I don't date men who have to buy my company." His grip tightened slightly. "I bought one night. I'm asking for more." The answer is still no. "Give me a real reason." "Fine." She yanked her wrist free. "Because every time you'd touch me, I'd wonder if you were remembering what you paid for. Every time you'd kiss me, I'd calculate the price. Every moment together would be tainted by the fact that our first time, our only time, was a business transaction. It wasn't just business, and you know it. Do I?" She met his gaze again, letting him see all the pain and confusion she'd been hiding. "Tell me something, Mr. Davenport. If I hadn't needed the money, if I hadn't been desperate enough to accept your offer, would you have ever noticed me? Would you have looked twice at another ambitious lawyer trying to make it in New York?" "Yes." The answer came without hesitation. "From the moment I saw your case record, I knew you were different, special. Special enough to buy, but not special enough to pursue properly." Pain flashed across his face. "I didn't know how else to get close to you. And that's exactly why this can never work." She stepped back, increasing the distance between them. "You're used to taking what you want, to controlling every situation. When you couldn't control me through normal means, you used money instead." She shook her head. "That's not love, Liam. That's possession. Give me a chance to prove you wrong." "I can't." She reached for her clutch on the nearby table. "Because every time I look at you, I'll remember that my mother's life was worth $5 million to you. That my pride, my dignity, my self-respect, all of it had a price tag." She turned toward the elevator. "And some things, once sold, can never be bought back." "Jasmine!" His voice stopped her at the elevator doors. "What if I told you I'm falling in love with you?" She closed her eyes against the surge of emotion his words triggered. "Then I'd tell you to find someone whose love isn't already spoken for." "By who?" "By the woman I used to be." She pressed the elevator button. "The one who would never have let herself be bought." The doors opened with a soft chime. She stepped inside, finally turning to face him one last time. He stood there, naked and vulnerable in the morning light, looking nothing like the powerful CEO who had propositioned her just 24 hours ago. "Goodbye, Mr. Davenport." The doors began to close. Just before they shut completely, she heard his whispered response. "This isn't over." But it had to be. Because if it wasn't, if she let herself believe in the possibility of more, then everything she'd sacrificed, everything she'd compromised, would mean something different, something deeper, something that might break her completely. As the elevator descended, carrying her back to her real life, she forced herself to focus on the facts. Her mother would get treatment. Her financial problems were solved. One night of her life in exchange for salvation, a fair trade, even if her heart disagreed. 1 week later, the conference room at Morrison & Reed hummed with nervous energy. Associates whispered among themselves, partners checked their phones with unusual frequency, and even Robert Morrison Jr. looked uncomfortable in his bespoke suit. Jasmine sat at her usual spot, reviewing case files with deliberate calm. The firm-wide meeting had been called suddenly that morning, with rumors of a major shake-up circulating through the office. She had her suspicions about what was coming, but kept them to herself. The managing partner, Harold Morrison Sr., entered the room flanked by 2 men Jasmine didn't recognize. The whispering stopped immediately. Good morning, everyone." Morrison Sr.'s voice carried its usual authoritative tone. "I'll keep this brief. As of 9 a.m. this morning, Morrison & Reed has been acquired by Davenport Industries." The room erupted in murmurs. Jasmine's pen stopped moving mid-sentence, her heart stuttering in her chest. "Mr. Davenport couldn't be here personally," Morrison continued, "but his representatives will be overseeing the transition. There will be some organizational changes." The rest of his words faded into background noise as Jasmine's mind raced. 1 week. She'd managed 1 week of freedom before he made his move. Her phone buzzed quietly. "Unknown number, my office. 6 p.m. L.D. She deleted the message without responding, but her hands trembled slightly as she returned to her notes. Around her, partners and associates continued their worried discussions about the acquisition. "Ms. Turner." She looked up to find one of Davenport's representatives standing over her desk. "Yes, could you come with me? There are some matters requiring your immediate attention." Jasmine felt Robert's eyes on her as she gathered her things. The whispers followed her out of the conference room, growing louder as she left. The representative led her to what had been Morrison Senior Tarty's office. The nameplate was already gone, the space stripped of personal items. "Efficient, like everything in Liam's world. Mr. Davenport will call shortly," the man said, closing the door behind him as he left. Jasmine remained standing, unwilling to make herself comfortable in this space that reeked of Liam's influence. The phone on the desk rang exactly 1 minute later. "No," she spoke before he could. "Whatever game you're playing, I'm not interested." "This isn't a game, Jasmine." His voice, even through the phone, sent unwanted shivers down her spine. "This is business. You bought an entire law firm to get to me. I bought a law firm because it was undervalued and mismanaged." A pause. "The fact that it gives me a reason to see you is supplementary. I quit." "No, you don't. You can't stop me. Actually, I can." Papers rustled on his end of the line. "Your contract has a non-compete clause. If you leave, you can't practice law in New York for 2 years. Jasmine's fingers clenched around the phone. "You had no right." "I had every right. I own the firm now." His voice softened slightly. But that's not why you should stay." "Why should I?" "Because I'm making you managing partner of the litigation department." The words hit her like a physical blow. "What?" "Robert Morrison Jr. has been encouraged to pursue other opportunities. The department needs new leadership, someone with actual talent." Another pause. "Someone who isn't afraid to fight for what they believe in. You can't buy me with a promotion." "I'm not trying to buy you. I'm recognizing your abilities." She could hear the smile in his voice, the same abilities that impressed me long before our arrangement. Jasmine sank into the chair, suddenly needing its support. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you were wrong that morning." "About what?" "About me only wanting possession." Papers shuffled again. "Check your email." Her phone buzzed with a new message. She opened it to find a PDF document, a contract transferring ownership of Morrison and Reed to a new entity. "Read the ownership structure," Liam said quietly. Her eyes scanned the document, then stopped, widening in shock. 49%. "Yours, if you want it. No strings attached." His voice turned serious. "You said I was used to taking what I want, to controlling everything. So I'm giving up control instead, proving that I trust you." "That I don't." She cut him off. "Don't say it." "Why not?" "Because it scares you. Because it makes what happened between us real. Because it doesn't change anything." She closed the email. "You're still trying to control the situation, just in a different way. Using business instead of money, ownership instead of sex. Then what do you want?" A note of frustration crept into his voice. "Tell me how to prove this is real." "You can't." She stood, needing to move, to think, because everything you do comes from a place of power, of control. Even this conversation, you bought an entire firm just to force me to talk to you. I bought a firm to keep you in my life. That's the problem." She ran a hand through her hair. "You don't pursue what you want. You acquire it. You don't ask. You take. Even when you're trying to be romantic, you're still acting like a CEO making a hostile takeover." Silence stretched between them. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, rougher, more like the man she'd glimpsed in early morning light. "Have coffee with me." "What?" "Not dinner." Not drinks, just coffee. She heard him take a deep breath. Please. The vulnerability in that single word made her heart clench. And why? Because I want to know how you take your coffee. Because I want to see you in daylight, wearing comfortable clothes instead of armor. Because I want... He paused. I want to learn how to pursue instead of acquire. Jasmine closed her eyes, fighting against the warmth spreading through her chest. The answer is still no. Why? Because I need to learn who I am without you first. She gripped the phone tighter. And I spent one night letting you strip away my defenses. Now I need time to rebuild them, to figure out if the woman I am now is someone I can live with. And if she is, then maybe. She swallowed hard. Maybe we can have that coffee someday. Another long silence. Then, I'll wait. Don't make promises you can't keep. I never do. His voice turned serious again. The ownership offer stands. Regardless of your decision about us, you've earned it. And the promotion isn't contingent on anything either. You're the best lawyer in this firm, and I'm not letting talent go to waste because of personal complications. Jasmine looked out the office window at the Manhattan skyline. Somewhere out there, her mother was receiving her second treatment. Somewhere out there, her old life was waiting to be reclaimed. I'll think about it, she said finally. The job or the coffee? Both. She straightened her spine. But for now, I have work to do. Real work, not whatever game you're playing. It was never a game, Jasmine. Prove it. She allowed herself a small smile. By staying away until I'm ready. And how will I know when that is? I'll let you know. She moved toward the door. Goodbye, Mr. Davenport. Until later, Ms. Turner. She hung up before he could say more, before the warmth in his voice could weaken her resolve. Outside the office, the firm buzzed with speculation about the acquisition, about her mysterious meeting, about what it all meant. Let them talk. She had a litigation department to run, a career to rebuild, and a self to rediscover. And maybe, just maybe, a future cup of coffee to consider. But first, she had to learn to trust herself again, even if her heart kept trying to trust him instead. 1 month later, You can't be serious, Robert Morrison, Jr. stood in Jasmine's office doorway, his face flushed with anger. The Wilson case is mine. I've been working on it for months. Jasmine didn't look up from the brief she was reviewing. The Wilson case requires actual legal expertise, not golf course connections. The client specifically requested a change in representation. She marked a correction in red ink. And they're staying with the firm, just not with you. This is because of him, isn't it? Robert's voice dripped with insinuation. Everyone knows how you really got this position, what you had to do to... Careful. Now she did look up, fixing him with a stare that had made witnesses crumble on the stand. The next words out of your mouth could constitute workplace harassment. Would you like to rethink them? Robert's mouth snapped shut, but his eyes blazed with hatred. This isn't over. Actually, it is. She returned to her work. Close the door on your way out. She waited until his footsteps faded before allowing herself a small smile. In the month since taking over the litigation department, she'd made significant changes. Merit-based case assignments, regular performance reviews. No more cases being handed out based on country club memberships or family connections. Some partners had resigned in protest. Others had adapted, discovering they actually enjoyed having to earn their success. The firm's win rate had already improved by 12%. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Just finished treatment number 9. Doctor says the results are promising. You're working too hard, though, baby. When are you going to tell me how you really afforded all this? Jasmine's smile faded. She told her mother that she'd received a substantial bonus and investment returns. The lie sat heavy in her stomach every time they spoke, but it was better than the truth. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Catherine Walsh, Liam's executive assistant, stood in the doorway. Ms. Turner, do you have a moment? Jasmine tensed slightly. In the past month, all communication from Liam had come through Catherine. Meeting notices, policy changes, routine business matters. He'd kept his word about giving her space, but his presence lingered in every corner of the firm. "Of course," she gestured to the chair across from her desk. "What can I help you with?" Catherine sat, her expression professionally neutral. "The annual Davenport Industries Charity Gala is next weekend. As managing partner of litigation, your presence is expected." Jasmine's heart skipped. "I wasn't aware all department heads attend." Catherine's tone left no room for argument. "The event benefits children's cancer research. Black tie, starting at 7 p.m. at the plaza." She placed an elegant invitation on Jasmine's desk. "Mr. Davenport asked me to assure you that this is purely professional. Your attendance reflects your position in the firm, nothing more." "I see." Jasmine picked up the invitation, noting the heavy cardstock, the gold embossing. "And I'm supposed to believe he won't use this as an opportunity to—" "Ms. Turner." Catherine's expression softened slightly. "May I speak freely, please? I've worked for Mr. Davenport for 8 years. I've seen every type of woman try to capture his attention. Models, actresses, socialites, business moguls. None of them lasted more than a few dates." She leaned forward slightly. "But in the past month, he's turned down every dinner invitation, every charity event companion, every attempt to set him up. He's buried himself in work, expanded into 3 new markets, and acquired 2 companies. Your point? My point is that he's respecting your boundaries, giving you the space you asked for, even though it's clearly driving him crazy." She stood, smoothing her skirt. "The least you could do is attend one business function without assuming ulterior motives." After Catherine left, Jasmine stared at the invitation for a long time. Part of her wanted to send her regrets, to maintain the careful distance she'd established, but a smaller, more insistent part wondered what would happen if she went. If she faced him on equal footing, not as a woman he'd bought, but as a professional peer. Her intercom buzzed. "Miss Turner, the Wilson clients are here for their meeting." "Right, work first. Personal complications later." The meeting went better than expected. The Wilsons were impressed with her grasp of their case, her strategic approach to their defense. By the time they left, they'd signed an expanded retainer agreement. "Nicely done." The voice from her doorway made her freeze. She looked up to find Liam standing there, impeccable in a charcoal suit she'd never seen before. Her body's immediate reaction to his presence was embarrassing. "Mr. Davenport." She was proud of how steady her voice remained. "I wasn't aware you were in the office today." "Board meeting." He didn't enter the room, maintaining a professional distance. "I heard about the Wilson case." "Excellent work. Thank you." She began gathering papers, needing something to do with her hands. "Was there something specific you needed?" "Just checking on my investment." His tone was carefully neutral. "The firm's numbers have improved significantly under your leadership." "The whole team's leadership," she corrected. "I'm not doing this alone." "Of course not." A slight smile tugged at his lips. "Though I notice Robert Morrison Jr. isn't taking the changes well." "Robert Morrison Jr. isn't taking accountability well," she replied. "There's a difference. Need me to handle it?" "No." She met his gaze directly. "I can fight my own battles." Something flashed in his eyes. Pride, desire. Before she could analyze it, his professional mask slipped back into place. "Catherine told you about the gala?" "Yes." "Will you attend?" She hesitated. "Gay, would you prefer I didn't?" "I'd prefer." He stopped, took a breath. "What I prefer doesn't matter. This is business, nothing more." "Is it?" "It has to be." He gripped the doorframe slightly. "Until you're ready for more." The tension between them crackled like electricity. Jasmine found herself remembering other tensions, other moments when the air had felt this charged. "I'll be there," she said quickly, before the memories could overwhelm her. Professionally speaking, he nodded once. "I look forward to it." He turned to leave, then paused. "You look good behind that desk, Miss Turner. Like you belong there." "I do belong here." She lifted her chin. "Not because you put me here, but because I earned it." "I know." His smile turned genuine. "That's why I chose you." Before she could respond, he was gone, leaving only his cologne and the memory of his smile lingering in the air. Jasmine sank back in her chair, her heart racing. 1 month of carefully maintained distance, of focusing on work and her mother's recovery, of rebuilding her sense of self, and one 30-second interaction had nearly undone it all. The gala invitation seemed to mock her from her desk. 1 week. She had 1 week to prepare herself to face him properly, to prove she could handle being in his presence without falling apart, to show everyone, including herself, that whatever had happened between them was truly in the past. But as she touched her fingers to her lips, remembering other touches, other moments, she wondered who she was really trying to convince, and whether any amount of preparation could protect her heart when she saw him again. The Plaza Hotel's grand ballroom glittered with New York's elite. Diamond necklaces caught the light from crystal chandeliers, champagne flowed freely, and the orchestra played selections from classic films. It was exactly the kind of event Jasmine would have avoided a month ago, before her promotion, before her world had shifted on its axis. She stood at the edge of the room, watching the crowd while pretending not to search for one particular face. Her dress, a deep burgundy marchesa that had cost more than her old monthly salary, made her feel both powerful and exposed. The color brought out the richness of her skin tone, and the cut suggested elegance, while revealing just enough to make certain memories stir. Miss Turner, Catherine Walsh, appeared at her elbow, elegant in black. "The commissioner would like to meet you. He's considering moving his department's legal work to our firm." Jasmine followed Catherine through the crowd, accepting introductions, making small talk about cases and contracts. She was good at this part now, the networking, the subtle power plays, the careful dance of influence. An hour passed, then 2, and she still hadn't seen "Ladies and gentlemen." A familiar voice cut through the noise, making her pulse jump. "If I could have your attention, please." Liam stood on the small stage where the orchestra had been playing. The spotlight caught the silver in his hair, the perfect cut of his tuxedo, the command in his stance. But it was his eyes that held her, scanning the crowd until they found her, then lingering for just a moment too long. "Thank you all for coming tonight." His voice carried easily through the room. "As you know, Davenport Industries has always believed in giving back to the community. Tonight, I'm pleased to announce that we're doubling our commitment to children's cancer research with a new $50 million grant program." Applause filled the room. Jasmine felt her throat tighten, thinking of her mother's ongoing treatments. "Additionally," Liam continued, "I'm proud to announce that our legal division, under the leadership of Ms. Jasmine Turner, will be providing pro bono services to families struggling with medical bills and insurance disputes." The spotlight suddenly found her, and hundreds of faces turned in her direction. She maintained her composure, years of courtroom experience coming to her aid, but inside her heart raced. He hadn't mentioned this program to her, hadn't even hinted at it. Ms. Turner's department has already shown remarkable results in their first month, Liam was saying. Their commitment to excellence, to justice, to fighting for those who need it most, these are the values that define our company's future. The spotlight moved away, but she could still feel his gaze on her. When she finally looked at him again, the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. The rest of his speech passed in a blur. When he finished, the orchestra resumed playing, and the crowd returned to their conversations and champagne. "He didn't tell you about the pro bono program, did he?" Jasmine turned to find Catherine watching her with knowing eyes. "No," she admitted. "He didn't. He's been working on it for weeks, wanted it to be perfect before announcing it." Catherine sipped her champagne. "He remembered every detail you mentioned about your mother's medical bills, about other families facing similar struggles. Used that to design the program." Before Jasmine could respond, a new voice joined them. "May I have this dance?" Liam stood before them, one hand extended. Up close, she could see the tension in his jaw, the careful control in his posture. "I don't think," she began. "One dance," he said softly, "for the sake of business appearances." Catherine conveniently disappeared, leaving Jasmine no choice but to accept his hand. The orchestra was playing Moon River, and other couples had already filled the dance floor. His hand settled on her waist, professional but intimate, as he led her into the dance. The heat of his palm burned through the thin fabric of her dress, bringing back memories of other touches, other moments. "You look stunning," he murmured, his lips close to her ear. "The pro bono program," she said, ignoring the compliment. "Udo, why didn't you tell me? Would you have agreed if I had?" "That's not the point." "Then what is?" His hand tightened slightly on her waist. "That I remembered everything you told me that night. That I actually listened when you talked about wanting to help people. That I'm trying to prove—" "Don't!" She met his gaze. "Don't make this about us." "Everything is about us." He pulled her slightly closer as they turned. "Every decision I make, every move I plan, everything circles back to you, to that night, to what I felt when—" "Stop!" She tried to pull back, but his grip held firm. "We're in public. I don't care." His voice dropped lower. "Do you know what torture it's been, seeing you every day, watching you succeed, being proud of you from a distance? Do you know how many times I've started to walk to your office just to talk to you? Liam, say it again." "What?" "My name." His eyes burned into hers. "Say it again." "No." She shook her head slightly. "We can't do this. Not here. Not now." "Then when?" The orchestra shifted to a slower song, giving him an excuse to draw her even closer. "How long are you going to punish us both?" "I'm not punishing anyone." But her body betrayed her, melting into his embrace like it remembered exactly where it belonged. "I'm protecting myself." "From what? From me? Or from how I make you feel?" Before she could answer, a commotion near the entrance caught their attention. Robert Morrison, Jr. stood there, clearly drunk, his voice carrying across the room. "It's all a lie," he was shouting. "She slept her way to the top. I have proof." Jasmine froze in Liam's arms. Around them, other dancers stopped to stare, whispers spreading through the crowd. "I'll handle this," Liam said, starting to release her. "No," she gripped his arm. "Let me." She crossed the dance floor with measured steps, aware of every eye in the room on her. Robert saw her coming and laughed. "Here she is." The whore, who... The slap echoed through the suddenly silent ballroom. Robert staggered back, more from surprise than force. "Mr. Morrison," Jasmine said, her voice carrying clearly, "you're drunk, you're making a scene, and you're about to say something that will end your legal career. I suggest you leave now, while you still have a chance to blame this on the alcohol." "You can't threaten me," he slurred. "I have proof. The night you met him. The hotel records. The payment for what?" She stepped closer, her voice dropping so only he could hear, "for consulting work on the Anderson merger, for strategic advice about pharmaceutical acquisitions." Choose your next words very carefully, Robert, because if you're suggesting anything else, you'll be admitting to investigating my private financial records, a federal offense when done without cause or warrant. She watched the implications sink into his alcohol-soaked brain, watched him realize that any evidence he had could prove professional consulting work just as easily as anything else. "You really want to play this game?" she continued quietly. "Because I guarantee I'm better at it than you are." Security had arrived, flanking Robert discreetly. He looked around the room at the hundreds of witnesses to his humiliation and seemed to deflate. "This isn't over," he muttered as security led him away. "Actually," she called after him, "it is. You're fired." The crowd burst into applause. Jasmine turned to find Liam watching her with an expression that made her heart stop, pride and desire, and something deeper, something that scared her more than any public scandal could. She walked past him without stopping, heading for the terrace. She needed air, needed space, needed to think. The night air was cool on her heated skin. Manhattan spread out below her, a carpet of lights and possibilities. Behind her, the door opened and closed. "Don't," she said without turning around. "I'm not here to pressure you." Liam's voice was soft. "I'm here to tell you I'm proud of how you handled that, and to warn you that the board will probably want to investigate his claims. Let them." She gripped the terrace railing. Everything was legal. professional, documented. I know. He moved to stand beside her, careful not to touch her. I made sure of it. She turned to look at him then. You knew this might happen. I suspected Robert would try something eventually, so I made sure there was a paper trail, consulting agreements, meetings about the Anderson merger, everything properly recorded and filed. Why? Because I wanted to protect you. He faced her fully. Because even then, before that night, I knew you were something special, something worth protecting. I don't need protection. No, he agreed. You need partnership, equality, someone who sees you as you are and wants to lift you higher, not own you. And you think that's you? I think. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. I think I'm learning how to be that person. Learning how to pursue instead of acquire. Learning how to love instead of possess. The word hung between them, heavy with possibility and danger. Liam, she whispered, and felt him shiver at the sound of his name. Come home with me, he said softly. Not for money, not for power, just because you want to. For a moment, she was tempted, so tempted. But I can't. She stepped back. Not yet. When? When I'm sure. She met his gaze steadily. Sure that what I feel is real, not gratitude or obligation or Stockholm syndrome. Sure that what you feel isn't just the thrill of the chase. He nodded slowly. How will you know? I don't know, she smiled slightly. But when I figure it out, maybe we can have that coffee you mentioned. I'll wait. He reached for her hand, brought it to his lips. And no matter how long it takes. As she walked away, leaving him alone on the terrace, Jasmine felt something shift inside her. Something that felt less like running away and more like running toward. She just wasn't sure what or who she was running toward yet, but for the first time since that night, she was ready to find out. 3 months later, cancer-free. Jasmine stared at the test results in her hands, her vision blurring with tears. Beside her, Regina Turner sat in her hospital bed, beaming despite her exhaustion. Did you hear me, baby? Cancer-free. Her mother's smile could have lit up all of Manhattan. The experimental treatment worked. Dr. Chen says it's almost miraculous how well I responded. Jasmine clutched her mother's hand, unable to speak. 3 months of treatments, of anxiety, of holding her breath every time the phone rang. And now you can stop working so hard, Regina continued, squeezing her daughter's fingers. I see those dark circles under your makeup, running a whole department, checking on me every day. You're going to burn yourself out. I'm fine, Mom. Jasmine wiped her eyes carefully, mindful of her makeup. She had a major client meeting in an hour. Besides, I love my work. Regina gave her that knowing look that had seen through every childhood fib. And does this love of work have anything to do with your mysterious boss, the one who keeps sending those gorgeous flower arrangements to my room? Jasmine tensed slightly. She'd told Liam to stop sending flowers, but he'd simply switched to having them delivered without cards. He's not my boss. I'm a partner now. A partner who still won't tell me how she really afforded my treatment. Regina's voice turned serious. Baby, I'm not stupid. I know something happened, something that changed everything for us. When are you going to trust me enough to tell me? Jasmine looked at their joined hands, her mother's now strong enough to grip properly, nails painted their signature coral. What if, she took a deep breath, what if I made a choice? A difficult one that saved your life, but changed who I am, changed or revealed. What do you mean? Regina reached up to touch her daughter's face. You've spent your whole life being perfect, following rules, doing what's right instead of what's necessary. She smiled softly. Maybe this choice you made, whatever it was, finally let you be human instead of a superwoman. You don't know what I did. I know my daughter, and the woman I see now. Regina gestured around the private hospital room. She's stronger than the one who was killing herself trying to be perfect. She's real. Flawed, beautiful. She squeezed Jasmine's hand again. And if a certain handsome CEO helped her become that woman, well, Maybe that's something worth thinking about. Before Jasmine could respond, her phone buzzed. The client meeting had been moved up. "Go," her mother said before she could apologize. "Go be brilliant. Just promise me you'll think about what I said. About being flawed, about being real." Regina's eyes twinkled. "And about that CEO." The trip from Mount Sinai to the office passed in a blur of thoughts. 3 months since the gala. 3 months of carefully maintained professional distance. 3 months of watching Liam respect her boundaries while making his feelings clear in 1,000 small ways. The pro bono program had helped dozens of families navigate medical bills and insurance disputes. The litigation department's reputation had soared. Even Robert's attempted scandal had backfired, with most people admiring how she'd handled his drunk accusations. She had everything she'd ever wanted: professional success, her mother's health, financial security. Everything except the elevator doors opened onto the executive floor, and she nearly collided with Catherine Walsh. "Oh, good! I was just coming to find you," Catherine said, somehow managing to look unruffled. "The client meeting? I know it was moved up. I'm heading there now." "Actually, it was cancelled." Catherine's expression was carefully neutral. "The client's company was just acquired by a competitor." Jasmine's steps faltered. "Let me guess. Davenport Industries. Mr. Davenport would like to see you in his office." Of course he would. 3 months of professional distance, and now this. She should have been angry, should have seen it as another power play, another attempt to control the situation. Instead, she found herself smiling. "Ms. Turner." Catherine looked concerned. "Are you all right?" "Perfect," Jasmine said, turning toward Liam's office. "Actually, no, not perfect at all. And that's exactly the point." She didn't bother knocking. The massive double doors opened soundlessly, revealing Liam at his desk, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, looking exactly like every dream she'd been pretending not to have for 3 months. "You bought another company just to see me." She closed the doors behind her. "That's a bit excessive, don't you think?" He looked up, and the heat in his eyes made her breath catch. "Actually, I bought it because their CEO was embezzling funds and driving it into the ground. The fact that it got you into my office," his lips curved slightly, "that's just a bonus." "Right." She moved closer to his desk. "Oh, and I suppose the timing, exactly 3 months after the gala, is just coincidence. Complete coincidence." He stood, coming around the desk, just like the coffee cart that appeared in the lobby last week. "The one that serves your favorite drink." "You don't know my favorite drink. Black coffee. No sugar, no cream, because you think additions are weakness." He took another step closer. But sometimes, when you're alone in your office late at night, you add a splash of vanilla, a small indulgence that no one else knows about." Jasmine's heart raced. "How did you—" "I pay attention." Another step. "To everything about you. The way you twirl your pen when you're thinking, the way you touch those pearls when you're nervous, the way you're fighting not to step back right now, even though I'm in your space." He was right. Every instinct told her to maintain distance, to keep her walls up. Instead, she held her ground. "My mother's cancer-free," she said quietly. Something soft crossed his face. "I know. I got the results this morning." "Of course you did." She should have been angry about that too, about him monitoring her mother's condition. Instead, she felt grateful, protected, seen. "Jasmine," his voice was rough, "I've given you 3 months. Given you space, time, everything you asked for. Please." He reached for her face, fingers hovering just shy of touching. "Please tell me it's been enough." She looked up at him. This powerful, complicated man who had bought her body but earned her heart, who had given her everything she needed, then stepped back to let her find herself again. "I have conditions," she said softly. His smile was immediate, brilliant. "Name them." "First, no more grand gestures. No buying companies, no surprise programs, no manipulating situations to see me. If you want something, ask for it. Done." His hand finally made contact with her face, thumb brushing her cheek. "Next, equal partnership. In everything. No power plays, No control games. We face things together or not at all. Anything else? She stepped closer, eliminating the last space between them. Yes. Kiss me. His mouth claimed hers before she finished speaking. This kiss was different from their others. Not a battle for control or a prelude to passion, but a homecoming, a recognition, a promise. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, he pressed his forehead to hers. Move in with me. No, she smiled at his surprised look. Ask me properly. Remember condition 1. He laughed, that real laugh she'd heard so rarely, and stepped back. Then, to her shock, he dropped to one knee. Jasmine Turner, he said, looking up at her with absolutely no guard on his emotions. Will you move in with me? Not because I can buy you anything you want, but because I love who you are when you want nothing from me. Not because I can give you the world, but because you've given me something better, a reason to be worthy of you. Tears pricked her eyes. That's not a proper ask. That's a proposal. Yes. He reached into his desk drawer, withdrew a small black box. It is. Her heart stopped. Liam, I've had this for 2 months, he said quietly. Waiting until you were ready, until I was ready, until we both knew this wasn't about money or power or anything except love. He opened the box, revealing a stunning sapphire ring. Marry me, Jasmine. Not because I can provide for you, but because you provide something I need more. A reason to be better, a partner to be better with. She looked at the ring, at this man she'd sold herself to and somehow found herself with in the process. At the future stretching out before them, complicated, imperfect, real. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes. The ring slid onto her finger like it had been made for her. Knowing Liam, it probably had been. But for once, his tendency to plan everything, to control everything, didn't bother her, because this time she'd chosen it, chosen him, not for money or power or salvation, but for love. His kiss tasted of victory and promise and forever, of choices made and bridges burned and new roads built from the ashes, of one night that had changed everything and all the nights yet to come. Later, much later, she would tell him about her mother's words, about being real instead of perfect, about how sometimes the hardest choices lead us exactly where we need to be. But for now, she just kissed him back. Let herself be human instead of superwoman. Let herself be flawed and real and completely, utterly in love. One night had bought her mother's life, but the rest of her nights, those she gave freely, perfectly, imperfectly his. And somehow, that made all the difference. The end. Thanks for watching to the end. Did you like the story? Tell us what you thought in the comments below. We want to know what you think. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe now for more exciting stories you won't want to miss. Activate the bell to be notified whenever a new video comes out. See you in the next story. See you there.